All right. And we are live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our November movie club. Um, I'm going to try and keep it a little bit on the shorter end tonight. It's a holiday season. We all are incredibly busy. Um, but I'm really happy that we were able to get together and do these clubs. Before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. This is one of three multimedia clubs that we have at the Dragonfly Arts Collective. This is our movie club. We also have a monthly listening club, which will be meeting on Friday. We listen to The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. And yeah, so check in on Friday for that one. We also have a quarterly book club that's not going to be meeting until January. So if you haven't started the book, you have plenty of time to catch up. We're reading Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. And we don't have club meetings in December, so I am going to announce our next club picks on December 1st that we won't be meeting because of the holidays. So instead, these would be our January picks that are going to go up on December 1st. So you have a couple of months there to watch the movie, listening to the album, join us back here for our discussions on them.
And for that reason, we're doing the whole extended Lord of the Rings trilogy.
I already have the movie picked out. You can't just like come in here with like a better choice.
Well, if we have 2 months.
It's funny that we're actually doing something along those lines for Music Club, where we were like, oh, we have 2 months so we can finally do something that we've been talking about doing. And just like everybody was like, this is just too much of a time commitment. So I'm really excited, and you can stay tuned for that and look forward to that on the 1st. I try to keep these calls really small for the people that are on the calls, but you can always, if you're watching it on the replay, if you comment on them, I still would love to hear people's opinions and input on all of our media choices, including the past ones that you can find on our Facebook page. I also take suggestions for future picks on our Facebook page, so definitely check us out there. I had it up on the screen for a while, and then when I started talking about it, I took it down. But I also wanted to just remind everybody that we do have a Patreon. Right now, there aren't any perks. Everything that we do is free for the people involved. We try to keep it open, but it is a cost that gets incurred. So if you'd like to support us and what we do, you can support us for as little as $2 a month. And we are thinking about adding perks onto there. So you can stay tuned for things along those lines. Hopefully in the coming year, we can get that together.
Yeah. But in the meantime, we do appreciate any little bit of support because it's free for you. It's not free for us.
All right. And so without further ado, let's talk about our November movie, which I picked The Farewell. Have you guys seen this movie before?
Nope.
Did you rewatch it for the club, Derek?
Yeah.
It's one that was like on my radar for a really long time, and I just missed it when it was in movie theaters because it came out at the same time as like a whole bunch of movies, and I just like didn't have time. So I'm really glad that I was finally able to catch up and watch it. Based on a true story. Just for anybody watching, just know there's going to be spoilers.
Always are.
Yeah, for these, not going to put up a spoiler warning or anything for the calls, but just so you know, we will be spoiling it. Although, again, when it's something that's like based on a true story, it's kind of feels hard to spoil things.
Yeah, it's also like it's a family drama, so is there a lot to even but like the premise kind of gives away what it is. So
yeah, it's a dramedy where the humor is the situation of lying to your grandmother about the fact that she's dying and then trying to stage a reason for everybody to get together. Which is a cultural thing that I do not understand, and I feel like this is a movie where you do miss a little bit. I think that like with movies like this where it's kind of a memoir in the form of a movie, I mean, it's fictionalized. It's like it's a dramatic retelling, essentially. but I always feel like there's little bits and pieces in there that like you just don't understand because they were personal. And it reminds me of like this is like a whole genre of movies, but I always watching this reminded me of Everything is Illuminated, which is a movie that is also semi autobiographical of it's a guy going to Ukraine to find where his grandfather's from.
I love that book. Great book.
Yeah, it's
I
also a
didn't see
book.
the movie.
Yeah. Um, I grew up in Ukraine, and there are definitely jokes that I understood that, like, people I watched it with that didn't have that background did not understand at all. And I'm always, like, weirdly, like, interested in it for, like, what are the things that I missed? Because I am not Chinese and I don't know the cultural background behind, make your family member, like, don't tell your family member that they're
Yeah.
dying.
It's a very strange cultural norm that I didn't know about. That I feel like probably a lot of people who aren't Chinese don't know about, because why would you? But it's like it doesn't seem, and the protagonist Billy, like it's kind of her struggle too, being mostly raised in America, struggling with this concept of lying to your family member about their own life, and like what is the purpose of that? Which it's hard to wrap my mind around.
It also makes sense though to me of like, no, make sure that the end of their life is happy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course, I'm not Chinese, but I actually knew someone going through this like maybe 6 months ago or so. I knew someone who was from China, then moved to Canada, and then became an American citizen. But he had to move back to China to care for his father, who was in his 80s, and he was struggling with this, basically the same thing as the protagonist of this movie. Like, should I tell them? Well, his Chinese family members all wanted to lie about it to his father and like not let him know that he probably had cancer. So it is a real thing that is still going on recently. And um, yeah, in terms of like cultural understanding, I don't quite understand the point of doing that. But I think in the movie, there's a scene or two where the one uncle who moved to Japan sort of explains um, that, like, the point is to have the family have the burden of stress and take that burden off of the grandmother or the dying person. So it still doesn't quite make sense to me because I have to wonder how effective it is at actually making the grandmother like enjoy things. I don't know, because I would think that, like, since the grandmother, they said that the grandmother did this to another family member. It might have
Her
been
husband. Yeah.
her husband. So I have to wonder how she could be fooled by this. Like, wouldn't people catch on? I guess. Well, like, wouldn't the
I have a theory about that. I don't think she is. I think she knows. Not
Yeah,
the whole time, but at the end.
Yeah, I actually agree with that, especially on this rewatch. I did kind of think, especially in the actress's performance, that she was kind of playing along with the ruse and not letting on that she knows. So yeah, I can understand it from that perspective. But
It's also an interesting cultural thing of having your sister get the medical news, like the important medical news, instead of yourself. Like it almost feels like it kind of lends itself to that exact scenario.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different kind of cultural experience that I think those of us who haven't been exposed to it or grew up in that environment wouldn't really understand. Like, I do kind of see how, you know, they're kind of setting you up to enjoy the rest of the life that you have left versus like stressing about getting well or about death or about, you know, anything like that. But you'd think that like once these things escalate to a point where there's the point of no return and you're like on your deathbed, like it kind of seems like, at least personally, I would be like, how the hell did this happen? You know, like, because it would be all of a sudden, you know, like, oh, I was fine a month ago and now I'm dying. Like, what?
I don't just mean like the cultural, like behind the scenario itself either. So there's a scene that's pretty early on when Billy goes to the hotel and the guy talking to her in the hotel asking a bunch of really, really weird questions, which is a really awkward scene, but also distinctly reminded me of when I had to hire a driver in Xi'an and the questions that he asked me. And it was like this weird thing of like, what form of espionage is this? They'd be like, yeah, so are you looking forward to voting in the election? You're from this city. Do you know like how the people in your region feel about their politicians? And I'm like, what is this?
I feel like that's like a foreigner experience. Like if they know you're from America, everybody knows, you know, American culture. Like it's so ubiquitous around the world now. Like if you say you're from America, they're going to ask you questions about America. Like when I was living in Germany, they could not stop asking me about Bush. Like, why do you guys like Bush? Do you like Bush? What is it about him?
It's actually a specific thing that they are trained to do in hospitality school. Was what I learned later on. But it was like listening to that, I'm like, no, I've had this kind of discussion before.
Yeah.
with somebody in Chinese hospitality.
Yeah.
And because of that, I'm like, what else did I miss? Like what other?
Right. Yeah. When I was living abroad, the questions I got asked most often were about politics and about what's the deal with palm trees, and do you know any movie stars? So
it's the standard LA one.
Yep.
You get that as that no matter what if you're in LA.
It's true.
But overall, how did you like the movie?
I really liked it. I mean, I like A24 movies. I like family drama. I thought it was an interesting concept that, like, you know, probably a lot of Americans would not know about or be able to relate to.
Yeah, I like the movie as well. And especially on this rewatch, I just loved the cinematography, especially. And I was kind of surprised that it didn't get nominated for any awards in terms of cinematography, not just the Oscars, but I looked on like the IMDb awards page and I didn't see anything for cinematography, like not from any weird film festival or small film festival, just nothing for the cinematography, which kind of surprised me. I think Awkwafina got nominated for something at the Golden Globes for this movie, but so yeah, in terms of like the movie itself, it's interesting because there's just not that much of a plot, but I think it's okay in this instance. Basically, like every scene is just like the grandmother kind of I don't know how to explain it, but it's kind of like every scene is like a different situation where someone needs to tell a white lie about something, because Awkwafina also wants to keep her rejection from the fellowship a secret from everyone. So everyone is kind of telling white lies in every scene. And that's just kind of the plot. Like there's not much else going on and everything just, there's not really any twist. It just proceeds like how you would expect, I guess. but
Yeah.
I think it's good in this.
Everybody's
It's like
lying
a-
except for the mom. She is very direct.
Um, it also like it doesn't have an ending. It's a very small snippet of time where the spoiler for the ending being that her grandmother's still alive. And they were still lying to her. They never told her. She found out because of the movie.
Whoa.
Hmm.
Yeah, and at the time that the movie was released, 6 years later, she was given 3 months.
Yeah. Um, yeah, because the director says that her grandmother eventually found out when a friend sent her a review of the film.
Oh my god!
Hmm.
Imagine finding out that's how you're dying.
But I didn't get
That's
some
how
of
you.
the answers that I wanted, which was, did her cousin actually get married? Like,
Was it a sham wedding or was it?
I
Actually-
assume that this was a sham wedding, but like, how do you keep that up for like 6 years? Also, how did his poor like wife um, feel about this entire scenario? A culture that she is also not from, language that she does
Yeah.
not speak,
Yeah,
just kind of sitting there this whole time being like,
yeah. I'm sure that after the fact, he probably just told her that the marriage didn't last and they annulled it or something.
yeah.
Because I can't imagine it was somebody that he was dating for like a couple of weeks or something or a month. I don't remember what they said.
They said 3 months, and then they said that they were going to lie to say that it was 6 months to make it more
More believable.
believable. And then there's like a whole scene where she's like, how about we just say it's a year? And the grandma's like, oh, that's so much better.
Yeah, I can't imagine being put in poor, what's her name, Aiko?
Yeah.
Her position. But I did find the line from the grandma so funny when she was talking about her behind her back. And she was like, she's so stupid. She doesn't understand anything. It's not because she's stupid. She doesn't speak the language. She's just dumb.
I'm trying to like see what my slides are.
Who's
Don't have a lot.
Tony? I don't remember that guy.
It's Tony. You
Oh,
don't remember Tony?
oh, right, Tony.
I don't know who Tony is either. I have to assume it was like somebody at like in the beginning. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I remember Ex Mayo.
Yeah.
She was the petition girl.
right. I don't know. It's interesting the billing of like these characters that had one line, and then Dr. Song, who had like an entire conversation with her, is like so far down the list. And then Kathy.
Whoever she is.
There's a lot of people missing from here that like were members of the family. This is the most interesting
Oh
list.
yeah, the nephew, he's not here.
Yeah.
Oh no, how? That's him. No, that's the kid that got
The
married.
kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's it's just weird.
Yeah, the other aunt, I don't see her.
Yeah. I also really enjoy that it was Nai Nai as the grandmother, and then little Nai Nai
Little Nai.
as her grandmother's younger sister was little Nai Nai.
Oh, was it? I didn't catch
Yeah.
that.
That's what they called her, which is and then like they kind of dropped the bomb of like, well, what are you gonna do after she dies and you don't have to take care of her anymore? She's like, I'll go back to live with my husband.
Right. Yeah, I kind of got the feeling that was a lie as well.
Of just like, how many lies in are we?
Mm-hmm.
Everything's a lie.
Yep. What is even true? Who knows?
Let's see. Very small budget, $3 million.
Oh wow.
That is incredibly small.
Did this shoot in China?
It did. It actually shot close to where her grandmother lives. Her grandmother visited the set, and she talked about how awkward it was trying to hide
The plot of the movie?
plot of the movie so that her grandmother could visit the sets. Let's see if I have any others. Yeah, it was primarily shot in China over the course of 24 days, but also in New York City. So it was entirely on location for all of it. I don't have a lot of conversation pieces for this movie. I'm just really happy that I finally got to watch it.
It made me want to eat Chinese food. Like the scene where
Oh,
they're
hell yeah.
all eating together, I was like, oh, I want that.
Chinese food is delicious.
All Asian food is delicious. I love food.
One of the true joys of going to China was eating food. Mostly, I think most of my joy of going anywhere is eating the food, if I'm being completely honest. I think I'm very food motivated.
Food is good.
That being said, I didn't know what most of the things they were making were. They'd be like, hey, grab this thing. And I'm like, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, at one point she said she was making meat pies, but that was the only like recognizable thing.
And they didn't look like meat pies.
They looked like pancakes.
Yeah, I was like, that looks delicious. What is that? And then she said meat pie. And I was like, I don't think that would get me anywhere in a Chinese restaurant.
It looked like a bao to me.
So clearly, so a fun fact about me is that, so when I lived in Kyrgyzstan, which borders on China, I used to go to the Chinese restaurants a lot, but they didn't really have menus that weren't in Chinese. And so I don't speak any Chinese, but I can read a menu in Chinese because I know the words for rice and fried beef, chicken, which is the best symbol in Chinese. And like, so I know like what my meats are and whether or not it comes with rice and what kind of cooked rice it is. And that is the extent of my Chinese knowledge.
I know a very little because having taken Japanese, a lot of the Japanese symbols are taken from Chinese. So I know a few, like rice I would know.
But so that is my fun fact of, despite the fact that I had no idea what any food was in this. And it could be a regional thing. She specifically is from Chengchun, which is close to Beijing. But
what dialect do they speak there? Is it Mandarin?
I do not know. I know very little about China. All I know is how to tell you whether it's chicken or beef and how it's cooked. And even then I have to point and like point at it. So.
The thing in the movie, there's a scene where Aquafina or Billy goes to the hospital or whatever and says that she can't read Chinese. Apparently that's real for the director, Lulu Wang. Like she, even though I watched this thing on YouTube where she talked about the script. And so she wrote an English version and had to write a Chinese version for all the Chinese actors, but she can't read or write Chinese. She can only speak it. So she had apparently a translator make the Chinese version, but then her mother said that the translators made it too formal or something. So she had to like talk to her mom and have her mom do another pass on it basically to make the Chinese sound conversational. And And yeah, in this video, she does say that she speaks Mandarin. So
Ah,
that's the dialect that they're using in that region, I
yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
Where I went to high school, the population of the town, and it's gotten more so since, but it was about 80% Asian when I was there. And so that's how I learned about all the different dialects. But most of the kids that I went to school with spoke Mandarin.
I think it's the most common one, especially in the area that that's in.
Yeah, well, and
but
probably especially in the area that travels out too.
yeah,
Like a lot of them probably come from there around Beijing.
um, yeah, that's actually really interesting and fair. Chinese is, I think, probably the hardest language to learn to read and write. I think most people that speak it struggle to read and write it. That's like a very, very different skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I find it very interesting. Because I even my former roommate spoke fluent Spanish, but she couldn't read it. And Spanish is a phonetic language. It's like odd.
I have the opposite with French, where I can read French perfectly fine and I can't pronounce any goddamn word.
French is probably the hardest one to pronounce.
Like reading it, like fine. As soon as you try to get me to speak it, you will not understand any of it, and I will be made fun of. And I have been made fun of. Reading and writing's hard, but especially so with Chinese. It's a specific thing.
Yeah.
I do think it's funny that she immediately understood that she had to go get the test results to hide it from her grandma.
Mhm.
And I love that that was like somehow the climax of the movie. Was her like coming to terms with this lie and that she has to keep it up. But it also makes me wonder if their maid knew. Or was the maid also being lied to?
Mhm.
The housekeeper. I don't know. I would think she probably would know, right? Be in on the lie.
It's never explicitly stated or clear. It kind of feels like she also does not know.
I remember very little of her on screen, so I don't know. What was your guys' favorite scene?
Let's see. Hmm.
I know I am also like thinking through it. This movie is more of a vibe slice of life than it is anything that's like plot oriented. And so I think it is fair to ask like what's your favorite scene? It's kind of just a collection of
Mm-hmm.
vignettes almost.
Yeah.
I really enjoy the photo studio, the marriage photo studio, where they're just having a normal conversation, but I just really enjoyed watching the entire background and like somebody walking in on it.
Yeah.
And
I could
also
not
it's
take
just
my eyes
like,
off the background.
yeah. I'm just like, oh, that is a pretty standard place that does exist. I never thought about.
My favorite was the graveyard scene.
Mm.
That was great.
Mm-hmm.
Just them all bickering about the offerings around the grave.
Mm-hmm.
I love that they make them out of paper so that you don't actually have to burn the objects.
Mm-hmm. The paper coat, yeah.
Yeah, I
And
guess
the professional criers.
I liked arriving at the hotel, I guess, because I just enjoyed how Aquafina just wanted to be alone in her room, but then the hotel guy kept bothering her with questions and wouldn't leave the room. I thought that was pretty funny. And yeah, I also enjoyed the photo scene, the photo studio. Those were the good ones.
I was trying to figure out, and I didn't notice it until the end of the movie. And so, did she only bring one outfit?
Oh, I didn't notice. She had a suitcase.
She had a suitcase, but she kind of just always wears the same gray tee. And I didn't really notice it until like they were at the party and everybody was dressed up and she was still wearing the gray boxy tee. And I was
Yeah,
like, that's
with
weird. And then I was
with
like,
skirt,
was she
though.
wearing anything else?
With a skirt.
Or is that just like her character just has the closet full of gray tees?
I imagine that's her character. Yeah,
Yeah.
she like mostly wore sweats the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't notice her keeping the same outfit. I will say, however, that Aquafina and Lulu Wang look incredibly similar. Like when Lulu has her glasses off, her face looks almost exactly like Aquafina. So it's interesting to see photos of them together. So I think if I were to guess, I would say like the wardrobe is realistic um, in terms of what she actually wore um, in this situation. But
Oh yeah, they could be related.
yeah, they look incredibly similar. Although Lulu always wears glasses and she's older, but yeah, they're like their face just I don't know, like you could switch their faces and not notice.
So the casting was spot on.
Hmm. Yeah, and apparently on the first draft of the script, the character was named Nora instead of Billy, but which is Aquafina's real name, Nora.
Yeah.
And so it was just apparently a coincidence, but then she changed it to Billy because Nora is hard to pronounce for Chinese people. So she wanted something easy to say, I guess.
I
But
did think it was interesting that they continue to say Billy in Chinese. And I was like, if you were born in China, is that
Yeah, when
a
you have a
name?
Chinese name, yeah.
And so I was like, is Billy like a Chinese name? And I don't know. But it was a question that I had. Well,
Not one that I've ever heard.
um, so
I guess it
questions
could be,
that I have that can't be answered.
yeah, I guess it could be like, I don't know, maybe they've all just adopted her chosen name, or it could be derived from something in her Chinese name.
I do like that neither of them speak Chinese, Billy or her cousin. And they ask the cousin to speak Chinese, and he's just like very choppy.
Yeah.
Which is very reminiscent of anybody who's grown up outside of the country that their parents come from.
Mhm.
It's like this weird disconnect. All
Yeah.
right.
I just feel sorry for Aiko. I can't imagine sitting for like a week or two, or like, no, a few days, was like 5 days, something like that,
Yeah.
and not being able to understand anything. That's
You
rough.
start to pick up on context clues. I mean, she did the right thing multiple times. So,
She was just always bowing. Her response to everything was to bow.
to be fair, she is Japanese.
Yes.
So,
yeah,
it's kind of how it goes. I don't have anything else. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to talk about or bring up?
Not necessarily. I think isn't this Lulu's first movie, like her first feature?
So she has one that came before it called Posthumorous.
Oh, okay.
That was an American German film, and it kind of feels like a like not a real release in a way. That sounds like a bad way of saying it. It doesn't feel like it was a theatrical release. So I would say that this is probably what she considers to be her first movie.
Yeah, I would say yeah, it's
Although
very
she did write it. She also wrote Posthumorous. She was a writer director on it. So I guess I just lied to you.
Yeah, this very impressive. Like
did this made oh yeah, it did. It made the festival circuit before.
Yes. Yeah, it definitely was released as like an indie movie. A lot of the awards that it was up for nomination for was like independent movie awards. A lot of them for screenplay over anything else.
Yeah, I mean the screenplay is very subtle, and you know, having grown up around a lot of Chinese people, I really kind of understood like the context of a lot of the stuff. I did not know about that cultural tradition of lying to your family member, but it felt very authentic, which it being based on her life, makes sense.
One interesting thing that I saw on some video about the farewell is that when Lulu was going around pitching the movie to American companies, they kind of wanted her to sand off the edges in a way and make it more like My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which I've actually never seen. But and when she was pitching it to Chinese companies, they wanted to change it in a different way, and like because they thought that Chinese audiences wouldn't be able to relate to Aquafina's character because she's Chinese American. So, and they wanted a 100% Chinese protagonist, apparently. So, it's interesting. It's kind of like the movie itself was caught in the same cultural like canyon or whatever between Chinese and American as the protagonist.
That
But-
seems apt.
Yeah, make it not at all about what this movie is exactly about.
Yeah.
I think they also wanted it to be more of a comedy.
It's definitely more of a dark dramedy.
Yes.
Mhm.
The comedy is in the situation,
Mhm.
not anywhere in jokes or, how the story progresses.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of American audiences, or at least distributors who cater to audiences, would see death as, wanting to kind of tuck that away a little more. This movie very much puts death in the forefront of the whole. Like, not only is Nai dying and everybody's talking about it behind her back and not telling her about it, but also, they visit the grandfather's grave, and there's just a lot of themes of death. And I can see how distributors might be turned off by that. Even though I disagree, I think that these stories, are important to be told authentically as opposed to whitewashed. So,
all right.
but I don't make those decisions. So,
She eventually was able to get funding and get people talking about it because she created an episode for This American Life that was based around the story, and it caught the attention of some people that then helped her produce it the way that she wanted to produce it.
oh, nice.
Yeah, I haven't listened to that episode. I don't even know if I've listened to any This American Life episodes. But after watching the movie, I am kind of interested to hear what that episode is and if it's similar to the movie or.
I could probably find it. It's from 2016.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I used to listen to a lot of NPR, so I used to listen to a lot of This American Life before streaming was a thing, mobile streaming especially.
All right. If nobody has anything else to add, I did say that I wanted to keep our meetings a little bit shorter to accommodate the holiday and the busyness of the season. Does anybody have anything to add before we call it for the evening?
No, I don't think so. Just, yeah, it's a really good movie, I would say.
It's a very good movie. It's hard to explain how it's a good movie.
Yeah. It's funny, but in a somber way. And there's not much going on, but it's very fun to watch. So,
Yeah. All right. On that note, then, thank you guys for joining me, and I hope to catch you on the next one.
yep.
All right.